Hi there, everyone.
Puneet. What's up, Andrew?
Wow, Jay's wearing a collar shirt.
Jays. Okay, somebody's dressed up at least. Good.
No. This is called COVID Casual Friday. So
I went and washed my hair and everything, man. I took my hat, washed my hair.
You did.
I didn't take a shower though. I only do that once a week, even if I don't need it.
Really? Thank God this has happened. Thank God that you're not in the same room with your customers.
Exactly. It's only a new virtual world.
It is. You can stank up all you want. Who's going to complain?
I'll let you guess whether I have pants on or not.
Okay,
I'll leave that up to your imagination.
I bet you are not wearing pants. I have $20 that you're not wearing pants.
I've got pants on. I wouldn't do that.
I don't have pants on.
That I believe.
See? I'm shorts.
Oh yeah, there you go. Okay, I got shorts on too.
I'm not allowed to wear pants in the man cave.
Good call. Puneet, you didn't know what you were getting into with us, man.
I had no clue. What I was getting into. Yes.
You are so screwed.
Let's make this fun, man. Let's make this fun.
Let's have some fun. Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. You would go this far to make $20? All right, I get it. Awesome. Right. Cool. We still have time. Excellent. I'm going to log in parallelly on my computer as well so that I can keep an eye on the chat.
What kind of sports you follow out there in South Carolina, Jay?
Sports.
What's that?
What do I follow? I am the world's worst sports guy. Like I don't follow any of it. But college football is huge out here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
College basketball is huge in North Carolina, where I'm actually from. But that's it. I mean,
Yeah, Tar Heels, Gamecocks.
That's right, man. That's pretty fun stuff. I mean, Gamecocks, I've been to one game when they played Alabama once, SEC. I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I know football really well. I used to play when I was in high school, and I just don't keep up with sports at all. Oh, I was a kicker. I don't know if you count that as playing. But.
That's about as close to being in football as being out of football. You're a kicker? Really?
I was a kicker and a punter, yeah. In high school.
Hey, you know what? Listen, when the Niners picked their punter in the 4th round last year, I was skeptical, but this kid can freaking drop the ball within the 10 regularly. Coffin corner it. I mean, it's just
that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So I was like, all right,
half $1,000,000 a year to be a starting punter. That's not a bad deal.
Yeah. And your second choice was a rock musician, right? And then you fell back into customer success consulting.
Because I sucked at everything, yeah.
Because you sucked at all that other stuff.
No, yeah. I was a swimmer. I was a competitive swimmer in high school, and I played soccer. I actually played soccer before I got into football, which is normally how kickers get into football.
Yeah, of course. My daughter's got a mean kick. They're just letting her punt the ball now, and she can freaking punt it down half the pitch. It's great.
Really?
Yeah,
wow, that's awesome. Man.
She's got a really well. She's very tall.
She's 11 though, right?
She's 10.
10. Okay.
She's 10, and she's got these really long legs, so she just gets that.
Get the leverage on it. Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I followed a similar trajectory. I went from aspiring senior golf tour member to failed guitarist, lead guitarist, and fell into customer success.
This place where all the washouts go.
That's a path that leads to customer success.
Exactly.
That's encouraging. That's encouraging.
Sports, failed music career, customer success. That's your career path.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember in my school days, I was part of a band. I started assembling before the event, I'll assemble the drum set for them. Then they let me play the drums for a bit. It says, no, you try your hands on guitar. Then I did the guitar for a bit. And then I eventually, did all instruments, and they gave me back my permanent job of, you stick to assembling, and that's when I decided to call it quit. And then you're gonna
be a roadie, okay? That's where your best is a roadie. Wow, yeah, that's funny. Yeah,
indeed. So, hi everyone. Thank you. I see some of you've joined already. We still have a few minutes before we'll start. So, Nilesh, I'll let you lead whenever you want to kick off. As you can see, otherwise we will not even realize when the clock hits the committed time.
Sure thing. Chris is telling you guys that it's football, not soccer. Don't ever call it soccer.
Oh, there you go. And I don't know whether, Chris, you are saying that or not. I so believe Nilesh is just making this up. Let me find Chris and see if that's genuine.
No, it's it.
See all that stuff behind me? That's football. That's football, right? There. Football. God, I can't do this. You think I could do that already? No, it's football, it's soccer, whatever. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. That's annoying. I turn that off.
Where are you joining from, Chris? I'm wondering if you're from the football land or the soccer land. Canada, originally from Jamaica. Okay, fantastic.
Jamaica.
That explains it. Yes.
Ooh, I love Jamaica. I spent 10 days in Port Antonio, Jamaica. It was amazing. We stayed in this. Oh God, it's got to be 20 years ago. We stayed in this villa that overlooked the beach where they filmed Dr. No.
Okay.
Where Ursula Andress walked down the beach singing underneath a mango tree, and just amazing. It was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful area.
Was that in black and white? I can't remember.
Wow.
Good one.
Oh,
good. One.
Nice.
Game on.
Yeah. Good. It's good, Jay. Nice. Yes. Well played. Well played.
I'm not young, but I don't know what that movie is.
Dr. No, James Bond. It's a classic. Classic James Bond movie. All right, there you go. Just exposed your media ignorance.
Yeah, and I did it. So now Chris is keeping score, and I just scored against myself.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
All right. Once Andrew comes back, we'll kick this off.
I'm here. Just go ahead. I'm here. Just getting some water. I'm here.
In the meanwhile, Chris says we take away Jay's one for not knowing Dr. No.
Yes, and the fact that he's muted and he was talking.
All right, guys, we have had a fun 10 minutes of conversations. Let's kick this off. Welcome, everyone, to this exciting webinar, the second part of our series on the lockdown and the economic crisis, call it whatever you want to. The fact is that we have to keep moving forward. So we have got two brilliant panelists. Andrew Marks, he's the founder, president, and CEO of Success Hacker, one of the top customer success advisory firms. Anyone in the customer success field, I think they have probably either come across Andrew on LinkedIn or in some way or the other with Success Hacker. Andrew has led customer-facing roles at Voxer, Burst, Adobe, and a bunch of other companies over 20 plus years of professional experience. Our second speaker today, he spent 9 years with Blackboard and had a successful exit of People Matter to snag a job in 2016. And then he decided to find Customer Imperative. Jay Nathan, who is the founder and the managing partner of Customer Imperative. They are a purpose-driven customer success company focused on helping B2B SaaS retain customers, which is basically the entire agenda of today. And our moderator, Puneet Kataria, founder and CEO of Customer Success Box, and one of LinkedIn's top voices 2019 for his weekly videos on customer success. I think by now, our audience knows Puneet well. For those who don't, have a look at all the three guys on LinkedIn. I'll share the links soon. So over to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Nilesh, for setting this up. And thank you so much, Andrew and Jay, for agreeing to do this along with us and pulling time out of your busy schedule and having this interesting conversation with us. The topic, for today, I think is sort of speaks for itself. Customer retention. So we're doing this 4-part series, and this is part 2 of our 4-part series, essentially about driving what is the role, the purpose, the goal of customer success during these strange, unprecedented, movie-like COVID times. And it has put us in a situation where I think we all need to, nobody has been here before, and we all need to come together to figure this out and get out of this. Not just survive, but actually thrive and get out of this together. So today we are talking about how do you drive customer retention with this economic slowdown, with this lockdown, with this work from home, with all the challenges that this COVID curveball is throwing at us. I think the end goal today over the conversation that we have is that if we can leave you with enough tools, enough nudges, enough ideas, so that you can go and build a playbook for yourself, which hopefully will give you a process, a repeatable process, a process which which would have been a lot more thought through, and something that you can trust and rely on to go back and implement and essentially make sure that you're able to retain and at least maximize the retention of your customers. That's the idea. The way we're going to do it is we'll go. We have a series of questions that we will talk about, and I think somewhere about 15-20 minutes in, I'm looking at some of the meaty pieces of this where we are going to go through what are the potential tools that you can add in your retention armory or ammunition, and how do you go out and win this in the COVID situation. And then we're going to go into each of those tools, and hopefully we'll have enough times to discuss and debate as to what are the pros and cons of each, which ones can work, cannot work, and what situations they'll be interesting. So with that sort of said, let's kick in. And I think the first question is more around customer retention. I think it is time that we all know, first of all, that we are all in this together. With that said, with that backdrop, let's go ahead and define retention to start with. What do we mean by customer retention? Are we retaining logos? Are we retaining MRR? Are we retaining users? Are we retaining champions, administrators? What exactly? I think it's time to revisit some of the fundamental definition of retention. So whoever wants to go first.
I personally, you don't mind if I go first, do you, Jay?
I was going to say I'll let the elder statesman lead us off here.
Wow, another age poke. Okay, that's cool. I see how you are. I think you need to look at logo retention and an MRR retention, and I mean we want to keep our customers, of course. I'd rather have a customer sticking around if I got to get creative on something for 6 months while we get through this. We of course want to retain as much of our revenue as possible, but we also, I think, need to be prepared to get creative with and I personally would err on the side of logo retention, if we had to get creative, then of full revenue retention.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with Andrew on this. And I would add a third piece of it. There's cash retention. And right now, the way I'm looking at my customer success teams is, they're going to be closer to the actual lifeblood of the business than they've probably ever been before, because they're going to be helping us figure out who can pay their bill and who can't right now. To Andrew's point, I think we want to retain most of the customers that we have today, right? As long as they fit into our ideal client profile, we want to have those at the end of all this. We want to be able to lean on them, after this, if we can afford to keep them and afford to keep them without, making some of them pay if they're in hard times, it's going to benefit us in the long run. So, but I think this idea of cash retention is probably another vector that we have not, I don't think, in the customer success community spent enough time thinking about how we impact that, but it's a real thing now.
And I also think that with you brought up the ideal customer profile, which is 100% valid. This could be a situation where you could capitalize on, shaking loose some of those customers that aren't ideal customer profiles, because now more than ever, we're going to need to put even more effort into, not that we don't already put effort into taking care of the customer. We need to make sure that we're spending our time on the ones that are the right fit, that we think are going to be around and are going to stick with us, and not unduly tax us to help them achieve their outcomes.
That's right.
Good. Very, very interesting points, especially around, I think, around cash retention. So something that I'll chime in here is, I think when you are, and I'm speaking to the audience here. So for any business, when you are actually creating a playbook, I think there are two sides of risks that we want to analyze for yourself. If you empathize, and we spoke a lot about in our first part, if you put yourself in the shoes of your customer and realize what they are going through, are they actually going through a situation where, for example, I take that example very, very commonly. Let's say you have customers and they pay you per seat, per users. If they are downsizing, then are you at a threat of losing some of the users? And if that is the case, then you want to sort of keep that as a context, that's what is at risk. Or are you at the risk where your customers, you're serving in an industry which is shut down, hopefully temporarily, and they'll be back soon. For example, the restaurant industry. And then you are actually not under the threat of just losing a few users or seats, but you are under the threat of losing the entire account, especially if you're on a month-to-month plan. So putting yourself in the shoes of your customers and doing what I call a business scenario modeling for your customers, and you might have multiple segments, by the way, just keep that in mind. And in that case, you might have to want to do that multiple times, and then figuring out what is the actual risk from your customer's perspective. And in some cases, you might be serving, and to Jay's point, I think that was very, very clever of you to bring non-payments as a risk. That while customers may want to utilize the platform, but do they have the cash to pay? And then this is the customer side of risk. And then you analyzing, as a business, I think analyzing the business side of risk. What can you afford to lose, and what can you not afford to lose? And I think Jay, that was your point. if as a business, any business who's going to get tested where they might be very, very close to, running out of the runway, then obviously you want to make sure no matter what you have to do, but you want to maximize cash flow coming in. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to make one point on that. I think it's a great topic because so we're talking to literally hundreds of SaaS companies right now. And the thing that people are doing, and if you haven't done this yet, now's the time you're behind the 8 ball. If you haven't sat down with your CFO, sat down with your controller and put together a concession playbook that you can use to say, okay, when we have a request that comes in for some flexibility, like how are we going to prioritize those requests and how much can we afford to give? Because obviously a lot of companies in our space are backed by venture capital or private equity, and they're sort of running at a cash deficit on an annualized basis, right? And so we got to be careful too. We don't put ourselves out of business that way. So I know our executive teams are thinking about that. I know Andrew and I are both thinking about that for our respective businesses, right? But then how do we exercise the flexibility, with our customers? I think is a really important thing. And we should have a playbook for that, a predefined, decision tree around how we do that.
But the key is doing your homework on both sides of the fence. Not, what can we afford? What can we reasonably, let's come up with a standard set of concessions, to your point. And then, on the other side of the fence, really understand, do your homework on the customer, prepare a dossier, figure out what's happening, make some guesses, a hypothesis of where their business is at. So that you can go into that conversation understanding, potentially where things are at and be prepared, right? Be prepared to deal with it.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Sorry, Puneet, I keep cutting you off. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. No, I'm not. Go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say, you're doing your homework on who your customers are. We've been thinking about it in 3 buckets, and I'm saying it this way because it's easy to remember for me, but thriving, striving, and surviving. So if you could sort of put them in those 3 buckets, then what you might need to, where you might need to provide flexibility. If somebody's in the hospitality space, if they're serving transportation industry, or if they're in another industry that's been really hard hit, then we might put them in the striving or surviving category. But if they're in the thriving category, we might not provide the same level of concession there. But those categories also help you define what your posture is toward outreach to them right now, and the way that you interact with them outside of the commercial side of the relationship as well.
Yeah. How high you got to turn on the empathy. I mean, for sure. For sure. And quite frankly, if you're doing your job in customer success, you already know a lot about the customer, right? You should understand their industry. So this shouldn't be this isn't a tough leap, right? It's making some assumptions about what's happening out there and doing a little more digging into your customers, your recent business history. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
No, spot on. I think once we've sort of identified the risk in terms of the playbook, and I'm trying to summarize here, is I think the first step is we've identified the risk. Step 2, we get into, once we've done the homework, we've empathized, we've understood what the risk is, then dividing them. And Jay, I think that was a very good 3-bucket model that you proposed: thriving, striving, and surviving mode. 3 buckets. So essentially you want to go down and then segment your customers. It could be these 3 buckets. It could be industry-based buckets. It could be use cases-based buckets. I think it could be ideal profile, ideal customer profile, and non-ideal profile style buckets like Andrew mentioned. And I think that's sort of the key next step, because only when we are able to, club customers with similar challenges and with similar threats and similar situations that they're currently facing, you will be able to hopefully come out with a playbook which is a lot more applicable to all of them. So I think segmentation is number 2. And one of the things that while you're segmenting, now there is no good answer to it, but one more angle that I would love to invite comments on is, how do you take into account, assuming you're not on month-to-month plan, but how do you take into account if you've got customers who are on annual plans? And I'm assuming if those renewals are coming up, let's say in the next 3 months, you clearly want to create a segment very, very specifically for them. And hopefully the rest of by the time it's turned for the rest of them to renew, we hope we are already out of it and we are ahead, and all this is behind us. What do you guys say about that?
Hey guys, before you move on, there's a very specific question around your first answer. Tushar is asking, does cash retention also mean minimizing expenses around client retention?
That's a good question. It's a good question. That's not how I meant it.
Yeah, exactly.
But
that's not how I interpreted it.
Okay, yeah, but so I mean, you got to be careful with that. But I think that's probably a whole different topic of conversation on the expense side. But now is for most companies is not the time to cut customer success. It's actually the time to invest in it. But
yes,
we have to acknowledge that some customer success teams have probably been pulled into more operational roles that don't have the same level of perception of value that they need to have. And just by necessity, I think they're having to be cut. So, but anyway, it's a good question. That's not how I meant it for sure.
Yeah, no, frankly speaking, one customer success manager can bring in many times the expense of that individual, even if you take it in the extreme financial sense. I think every customer success manager pays many folds over for their own role and job for sure. But yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
cool.
if your unit economics are solid and you got a good customer success team in there, you're going to have all that person's going to be well paid for. I mean, it's. Yeah.
In fact, I'll give you an extreme example. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Andrew, but it just came to me. I was speaking to one of our customers, and they have actually moved. They've doubled down on their customer success by moving some of their sales managers who've been there for a very long time and can potentially contribute, because sales is overall down in this scenario. Depending on if you're still relevant, not relevant, and what
you have to be really careful with that. I mean, you have to do that very carefully. I've heard of that before as well, and it's a strategy that I support, so that you can keep the core, your team together and your customer base as happy and as supported as possible. But you have to be really careful with that. You have to make sure that the sales team, who are in a different mode typically, really understand what to say, what not to say, when to say it, when not to say it, how to approach your customers, and it's not just, you can't just assume. Okay. Don't just assume they know how to do it. Right. You need that actually needs its own playbook. Okay. And you really need to set some boundaries. But I want to comment back on the renewals. I think that, that when you're looking at your renewals, you need to be looking at your renewals over the next 6, 9, 12 months, not only the size, but the shape of it. Right. And really, and for the larger shaped ones, really understand where that renewal money is coming from, ranking your customers. Listen, you're going to need to make sure that you're spending you need to make sure that you're spending time in the right places, right? So you should be focused on those companies that are going to help you get that much closer to your milestone of hitting that renewals number, right? And what that means is that there's going to be some that you just don't make sense to focus on, right? And you want to be looking 90, 120, 180 days out, because quite frankly, the ones that are 30 days out, you're going to have a lot less influence over than the ones that are 6 months out, right? So understanding the size and the shape of that renewals pipeline is critical.
Absolutely. Jay, you have anything to add there?
I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot we could talk about with regard to how to prioritize these things, but I think it comes back to, you were asking about annual subscriptions and renewing those. So if we've heard a lot of stories of customers coming midterm and saying, hey, we'd like some concessions, but they had already paid for the year, right? And they're maybe being a little more opportunistic in trying to get concessions for future periods beyond the one that they've already paid for.
Yep.
So I think it pays to just be attuned to those kind of things. The other thing that, we're, talking a lot about with our clients that we're working with is if you have a customer that is in the thriving bucket and they're asking you for concessions, the same way that our governments are, providing, help to certain classes of people and businesses, we're going to explain the same thing to our customers, right? Like we're going to take care of those customers that that have lost 50% of the revenue or 75% of the revenue. That's our priority. So, you're in line, but we're going to put you in a different bucket than that. And we hope you understand. Right?
Now, if you have a challenge, if you've got a challenge though with cash flow, you could use that as an opportunity to say, okay, I'll give you favorable terms, but you need to give me some more cash up front. Let's accelerate the start date of your next annual subscription and pay me X. And what we'll do is we'll give you, access to, these three other pieces of, these three other aspects of our platform for the next year, and blah, blah, whatever the concessions are, so you can definitely use that to refill your cash reserves if you need it.
Yeah. The thing to think about when it comes to contract negotiations of any sort, and this goes beyond just the current crisis, but there's 4 elements of a contract, right? There's price, there's term length, there's the scope of what we're providing there, and then there are the payment terms. And all 4 of those things are levers for us at any given point in time, but especially right now. So I think we can use those to be creative with our clients and help find a solution that will work for both them and for us. Because at the end of the day, if we're negotiating, it's got to be a win-win.
Exactly.
Good for contract terms, and we're gonna come back and I think dive into each one of them and a bunch of other tools when we get to the tools section. Just one quick thing that I also want to mention when we're talking about renewal dates in mind, and I think it might absolutely be obvious to focus on renewals which are coming up in this month and maybe over the next 3 months. But also be sort of keeping an eye out for, sometimes we might feel that if you've got an annual contract and the renewal is still 6-9 months away, or maybe even a multi-year contract, do not assume that that your champion, that your product will continue to get utilized. You might have burn hours and hours in onboarding this customer, and they would have spent a lot of professional services, utilize your professional services, or otherwise spend a lot of their energy from their side getting onboarded. And all of a sudden, in this COVID ups and downs, reshuffling, people moving one department, focus is changing, strategy is changing, your champions might lose the focus. So while you might continue to get, while they may not appear as a formal churn, but if the product usage goes down to 0 or near 0, I think technically you've still lost that customer, although they will only appear in your books as a churn, when time comes to renew. So I think if you've got your telemetry in place, if you've got your customer success, account health in place and the risk alerts in place, one thing that we're constantly advising is make sure you recalibrate them for the times. So that none of these sort of hit you when you're not looking at them or not looking out for them.
Yeah, I think you're completely right.
Yeah. I mean, this is part of doing that. This is all part of doing that homework on your customers, right? Looking out 6 months. Okay, this customer accounts for 30% of our renewal number this quarter. We need to dig into what is their profile look like. Oh, they're in the travel industry. Holy. We're going to have a problem. Oh, and their usage is starting to drop. We got a problem, right?
Yep. And I would say, part of it's usage, and then part of it is just engagement. That's another. Yeah. And to your point, I think it reflects in your health indicators or your health KPIs that you track for each customer, because usage is one thing. If they're still talking to us and they're trying to make something work, great. But if not, like that's a different ball game.
But let's just wait a minute. Let's though, we need to be careful on that one. I agree with you. In normal times, I totally agree with you. But engagement across the freaking world right now is a little, people are people have kind of a toe out the engagement door right now, just because of what's going on. Okay,
yeah, it's different by industry. It's different by industry, though, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
it depends.
It's a good point,
right? Yeah.
But I think let's talk about it for a minute. So, what sort of engagement are you guys seeing? So we are seeing I think we are probably at our peak of engagement with at least with our customers directly, and that's what our customers are doing. Given that as a customer success platform, we work with other customer success leaders, so we sort of get that insight from them as well. I think everybody is at the peak of their engagement with their customers, and that's been the focus. But what are your takes on that? Are you expecting that it should be high? We of course want it high or higher.
I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think you need to. You're one piece of the puzzle of all the crap that people are dealing with right now. We're one piece of that puzzle. Where you rank on that, I mean, if you're mission critical, right, that's 100% agree with you. But if you're not mission critical, they may not be engaged with you for a while. They're trying to get their own world in order, right? And you got to remember, once again, it's not just you. It's you and all this other stuff that is, occupying their minds and their days.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I don't think you can make the assumption that you're more engaged than ever. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Andrew. I think it varies by industry, and it varies by you got to look below the surface at some of this data too.
Yes.
Right? It's not engagement isn't one thing, right? We had one of our clients who, the week that the stay home orders were put in place here in the United States, like their business tanked, right? Like lost 90% of their revenue, transactional revenue, but every single one of their customers were calling to make configuration changes to their product. That's engagement, right? It's just challenging engagement. And now that that's done, their customers actually have some breathing room to think about the future. So they're engaging, they're in the transportation space. But to Andrew's point, and maybe I'll go with you on this one, Andrew, like in the hospitality industry, you're probably not going to get anybody on the phone because they're trying to figure out, they're probably, just trying to figure out how they're going to survive for the next 60 days with zero income. Right.
That's I think it's the only point. They're filling out PPP loan applications and EIDL, and they're dealing with that stuff, and they're trying to retain their people. And right. So I'm just, my whole point is don't just blanket think that lack of engagement. They're also, lack of engagement doesn't mean a bad thing either. I've got a customer right now that completely went dark on me for 3 weeks, and then called me up yesterday and said, "Hey, we want to do all this big deal." So I'm just saying it's not black or white. It's not black or white.
Not one answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey guys, so we have another question. This is from Nimesh. He's asking, would you advise customer success leaders to adjust their retention targets for their team during the current scenario? For example, a 95% retention goal might be unrealistic in quarter 2, quarter 3.
I think that you need to take a look at that. I mean, this is one of those force majeure type of situations. It's an act of God, literally, that has created this situation that we're in. And it's one of those things that you don't assume, that you don't plan for a global pandemic when you're building out a comp plan. And at the same time, you need to keep, and I understand you got to keep your cash reserves, in check, but you also need to keep your people, and you got to keep them engaged, right? And the financial pain that you go through in the short term will pay off in the long term, because you've retained those folks. You've created a sense of support for the company, for devotion to the company, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, the sales side is being hit even harder on this because
Yeah, exactly.
they generally have a higher percentage of their compensation is variable based on commissions, right? So I think it's a no-brainer to adjust it. But let's also remember that, it may be better to take a 20% pay cut right now and keep your job than it is to get your bonus, right? So everything's relative right now. So I'd encourage CSMs, like if your company's got to make that kind of decision, then really think about that. There's a lot of people. I mean, every day we're reading about new layoffs that are happening in our space, the B2B SaaS industry. And so right now I'd be less worried about my comp plan and more worried about like just, doing my best, working with those customers, showing, the value to the business. And, we'll get back on track. 2021 will be different. 2022 will be different, but let's just hang in there.
Right. And my point on that, Nimish, will be, I think whether 95 is relevant or whether 70 is relevant or whether 50 is relevant, or maybe, if the context is such that nothing's happening for the next 3 months, then maybe, it's a 3 months pause. Whatever that situation is, whatever targets which are set for either sales or customer success, what I've always believed is keep them realistic. If they cannot be achieved, then I think it's no longer an encouraging target. It becomes a discouraging because you already know that you cannot make it. So I think that's my only advice. Keep them challenging at the same time. You want to work towards them. You want to feel good about when you do achieve them, but try to keep them as realistic. And of course, I completely understand anybody who's putting them together. Nobody has been in this situation before, so it's very hard to arrive at that realistic number itself. But do your best back of the paper napkin calculations, but base it on certain assumptions, and then keep validating those assumptions as they unfold. And that will give you sort of a more method to the madness. I think that's what we're trying to do. I wish we had the ready-made playbook that all of us could use, but none of us been there before. So yeah.
Yep.
No, but good question. Thank you. Keep those coming. Nilesh,
also, Jay, there's a direct question for you. You mentioned about giving financial help to your customers. So how do you decide how much financial help to give? Like, how will you base it on the company's financial health, or will you base it on how much your company can afford to help?
Well, I mean, look, there's got to be a balance, right? And if we make a bunch of concessions and we can't stay in business, then that doesn't help anybody, especially our client, right? Assuming we're providing value to them. So the way to figure this out is to go sit down with your finance team, explain to them, you as a customer success leader are bringing the voice of the market and the voice of the customer base to your company. Hopefully you're engaged at that level and you're understanding what's going on with these businesses so that you can relay context to the CFO, who is going to in turn relay context back to the organization in terms of what we can afford to do for our clients and help calibrate that. So there's not a one size all fits answer, other than now's the time for finance and customer success to be closer together than they've ever been. So that's my suggestion is answer that question for your company today. And if you don't have a plan, it's, you need to get one.
Time to get one. Yeah. Exactly.
And if I can just add, and I think given the situation that we are all in, and let's assume that if you are a smaller company serving a larger enterprise and you are providing them tons of value, you might actually go and even have a conversation which makes financial sense, because they're getting the value. They want to make sure that you survive this this situation. You can even make a case with their finance saying that, hey, can you pay upfront for the next 3 years, for example? I don't know in how many situations and how many of the current listeners are actually in that situation, but you can even turn this around. So I think because no business can do good individually unless they are supported by the entire partner ecosystem. So if you are real partners and you're delivering that value, I think they will absolutely care and make sure that you survive along with them.
What do you got to lose? right? I mean, extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. Yeah, it's an ask. What's the worst that they can do? Say no.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, good point. Okay, Nilesh, anything else? Otherwise, we'll keep going forward.
Yeah, let's go forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you, and thanks for watching the chat for us. All right. So now let's get into the actual tool set that we can use. And I've got a bunch of tool sets. I'm just going to read them out so that everybody knows that we are likely going to be addressing this. And we're going to look at pros and cons and where it's applicable, to whom it's applicable, and things like those. Discounting. So can we discount? Free upgrades. Changing the payment plans. Annual to quarter to monthly, or like I mentioned, if the situation is the other way around, maybe monthly to quarterly to annually, maybe you want to bring in cash flow and we do that. Extending any limits. It's not really a full upgrade, but you may want to extend certain limits like APL limits and things like those. Additional seats to handle the remote operations sort of a situation. That's another tool that I know people are using. Offering professional services, something that they will otherwise pay for. And right now, we all know that we are not selling as much, at least most of us are not. So if you're not selling as much and you are in that situation, some of us are Zooms and more relevant, and most of the customer success and customer retention sort of a play will come there. But you've got professional services who's not 100% utilized, you might want to extend those available hours in bandwidth, maybe for a lower fee or even for free, to help your customers out. Same goes for consulting, especially on the given situation, because we all are sort of learning from all our customers, and as a result of which we all become smarter in the process. So I think sharing that knowledge will be far more valuable as well.
Vineet, let me stop you on one of those. I would look at consulting and professional services just like you look at cash concessions, right?
Okay.
Because those are investments that you're making. Yep. And we have to really prioritize those the same way we think about who to give, flexibility on contracts with, because ultimately those are really good retention tools. And if there are key customers that we need to retain, like use them now, but use them in a prioritized approach. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's a good point. Key customers, right? That customer that's making up 30% of your renewal in 120 days, they need consulting professional services. You throw them at that.
Yeah,
right?
Lovely. So that's a tool, and we'll start with that then. But I'm just going to go down the list so that everybody knows that we're going to be touching this. And the last one is last two are the role of stakeholders. So how can we use your stakeholders, your executives, your CEOs, your VP of product, your VP of sales, your everybody else, not just the customer success teams, but everybody else rallying. Usually they rally behind, but now you can maybe even bring them up front in helping you out. So how can you do that? And the last, hopefully none of us need to use that, but how can you temporarily pause billing versus losing the customer altogether? That could be one of the last resorts that we want to keep. So let's go down. But since we already triggered a conversation on professional services and consulting, so Jay, why don't you start? And when should we use this? Is that applicable today? Let's start with that.
Yeah. Well, do you want to start with professional services, or can I go on any of those? Because I have a strong opinion on one of them.
Okay.
I have strong opinions on everything, but loosely held, that is. But so the one that is going to be hard to recover from after this, and when we actually get into an economic recovery, is discounting. And so we work with a lot of private equity-backed firms that are growth stage SaaS companies. And that is one option that we're sort of trying to actively push away from in almost all cases, just because if you devalue the value that your solution actually provides when you actually take the number down, and it's hard to move it back up later. So, just in order of sort of preference, I would start with maybe pushing out a payment. To your point, go from an annual payment to a semi-annual payment, semi-annual to quarterly, just whatever step you can take to make it a little bit easier, but not, go all the way with everything you have. And let's try to get as balanced of a situation in place with every customer that we can. But again, having that playbook to where we know what we can offer before we get on the phone with a customer. What you don't want to do is customize it for every customer, because it's going to take way too much of the team's time, way too much executive time. There should just be a process and an escalation approach for getting those questions answered quickly and consistently. So
if you do find yourself in a situation where you have to discount, though, you need to make sure it's multi-year, cash up front, and once again, it's got to be reasonable. But I 100% agree with Jay that you want to avoid that. You mitigate the value. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think very, very, very good points on discounting. I fully agree with both of them. So I think the only condition is to, if you want to bring in the cash. Good, very, very, very good points.
Personally, I love the free upgrades. I love the free upgrades one. If you've got multiple products on your platform, this is really only good for companies that have a bunch of different offerings. But being able to go to your customer and say, hey, I want you to maintain. I want to maintain the revenue this next year, and in return, what we're going to do is we're going to give you access to this additional functionality that we think you need, or the entire platform, whatever it takes. And you go through the onboarding and you drive adoption, you get them using it, and then that next year comes around. Look at that, you turn the situation into something where you can capitalize on it, do a big upsell, a big cross sell.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add there is so a lot of us, I think COVID also gave us this opportunity to see how can we be more relevant in these times, and that has driven pretty much all organizations to go revisit their product roadmaps, and majority of us have managed to pull out features that were otherwise sitting down below in the roadmap, and we've hustled around it and we've released those. So while you are offering a free upgrade, it may not necessarily mean that you have to upgrade them to the standard next plan. You might want to bring in a plan which is specific to the features, which are a lot more relevant today. Obviously, depending on your industry, people are working remote, all of those pieces. And if you have features like those, just giving access to those specific features or creating a sort of a in-between plan, and then hopefully that might even then sort of be an opportunity a year down the line to eventually make them pay for additional stuff that as that particular feature matures. So yeah, that's Jay, you want to add something to the free upgrade piece?
Well, yeah, I mean that's actually a technique we've seen a lot of companies using. Is in some companies are pivoting altogether to try to find new use cases, or out of nowhere have found new use cases for their products. I know I work with 2 companies that have done that. Actually, 3 companies that have done that. So I think they're, to all the points being made here, if we could just keep from eroding our price point, but provide additional value, I think that's what people are looking for. And I think people are going to remember, they're going to remember how we treated them and the kind of options and flexibility we came up when this is all over. And it's going to influence how they partner with us, after all this.
Yeah. The only sort of word of caution I'll add here is, so guys, I think fundamentally we have to make sure that we are relevant. That has to be number one, because if your base product is not relevant and there is no feature in the upgrade plan which is also not relevant, then obviously this will pretty much be meaningless. I think it's not just about sort of offering a free upgrade, but actually having a value proposition that makes sense for them in this time, because ultimately you're also asking your customer to adopt that product. That means you're demanding bandwidth from them in these times when obviously everybody is very focused on retaining. They're also busy retaining their customers and keeping their revenue streams going. So that value proposition is important.
Totally.
Let's go to the next one. Payment plans. I think this is going to be very interesting. Who wants to go first? Andrew, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, just get creative with your payment plans. If you need to delay a payment for 6 months, if you're in a good cash position and you need to delay a payment for 6 months, great. If the customer is in a good cash position, if they're in a strong position, and you need to you want to get payment up front, I mean, just get creative with your payment plans. There's no playbook for this, right? Where everybody's dealing with something we've never dealt with before. Get creative and do stuff that makes sense. I mean, that's
Andrew, I think the reality is there is a playbook. It's just we've never had this situation before. So it's basically taking everything we know how to do with these contracts and payment plans. People come to us for flexibility all the time.
Yeah.
Right. For one reason or another. Sometimes we can let them out of their contract. Sometimes we can't. But now we've got to do it at scale. And that's what there's not a playbook for.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
So specifically, digging a little bit more deeper into the payment plans, how would you guys advise, so is it always going to be a cash dependent situation? What if both sides are sort of trying to protect and preserve their cash flows? How will you then play out? Is it fine to move from annual to quarter to monthly? And when you're doing that, will you then ask, which is a typical thing, that, hey, if you're stepping down from an annual plan, you would typically, raise like 20-30% on a monthly plan, and maybe, smaller raises in biannual or quarterly? Or do you think we can just let go of that raise now? How would you play it out?
Those
are tough ones.
I mean, you should be looking at all those angles, I just don't think, I don't think, what I'm trying to say is, I don't think there's some cookie cutter approach to this. There's no one size fits all for this, especially because we've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
So be a partner, be empathetic, understand your customer and what they're going through, understand your own business and what you're going through, and make a decision with all of the relevant data points that make sense for both you and your customer. I don't know how else. There's no cut and dry thing here. I don't know, Jay, am I missing something?
I don't think so either. I mean, I would say, again, like the first principle here is that customers are going to remember how you treated them. And so if you say, hey, I'm going to give you flexibility on payments, but I gotta give you the higher price because now you're paying on a monthly basis. That's it's tough, right?
It's not a good look right now.
It's not a good look. That's
not a good look right now.
Point.
Really?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, every market is different. Every company is different. So that may work for you, right? But I think that's where you really have to understand your customers. If you're going to take a stance like that, you better know why that works for them and be able to explain it to them, right? Yeah. So it's all about knowing your customer and knowing their situation and having that in your back pocket, because
balancing that against where you're at as a company. Yeah. I mean, it's all just freaking make smart decisions using all the relevant data you can get.
Right. And one of the ways you can make it actually good look on both sides is that, hey, we can pay quarterly or monthly, and we will not raise any, we will not charge you what typical additional fee that we do for a monthly or a quarterly payment. But here is an option too that I can offer, that we will let go of 20% if you do decide to pay annually. And all of a sudden, if you are in a cash crunch yourself,
of course.
But
that's once again, that's not about the optics, and it shouldn't be about the optics. It's about what's good for you and works for your customer. Once again, this isn't simple. This isn't check a box, right? You're going to have to think. You're going to have to look at all the data. You're going to have to understand what's happening, and you're going to have to make some decisions. And so, it's. Yeah.
But Puneet, I do like the approach that you just sort of threw out there, because another thing that can be really helpful, and this goes for new business, but it also goes for renewals, is giving your customers 2 or 3 options that help them help you understand what's best for them, right? So
Yes,
if you could sort of anticipate the types of flexibility, like I love what you just threw out there. If you do renew on an annual basis, we're going to give you a one-time discount of 20% because it's going to help us and you can do it. I mean, that's a great option to have. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. You can still do the regular price on a monthly basis. That's just good practice anyway. But I think it's helpful, especially now, because it tells us something about what they value at this present moment.
Just make sure there are 2 or 3 good options that you are 100% behind. Right? Don't throw something in there that I'm not going to throw this. Don't throw something in there that you're really not going to be too hot on. Okay, because you're going to have to live with it if you throw it in front of them. You know,
don't throw a crappy option at them just because you think it's better if they go away. Like, just tell them that, right? That's
right.
The other.
Or you're telling them what you think that they want to hear, right? Even though it's not ideal for you either.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's Jid. I think that's a very good point. If you just can't sort of create a crappy option, that's actually gonna look so bad on you that you don't even understand what situation your customer is dealing with, and that'll only reflect very, very poorly on you. I agree. Perfect. Let's go to the next one. Extending so essentially adding any limits to any APIs, or essentially these are more like upgrades where you are freeing up or increasing the usage, giving them the next level of usage or permitting them that.
I think it's a great thing. You know, what's the cost to you, right? What's the cost to you? We talked about optics. What's the cost to you for doing that? Really, that's a cheap, low hanging fruit type of concession that you can provide. So yeah, you have that opportunity 100%. You should do that.
Right.
Especially if it's going to be, especially if opening that up is relevant for that particular customer. If they're medical device manufacturer and they have a limit on whatever data they're pulling out of Salesforce for something, you open that up, right? Whatever the scenario is, that should be at the top of the list. That's a no-brainer.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I think in any way, if you can add value which is relevant today, and then convince them with that, hey, here is how we are willing to help and go an extra mile, and we want this partnership to continue, and we want to help you through this. I think that's going to go definitely a long way. That's sort of, and you don't lose any cash flow and you get to retain the customer. I think that's probably the strongest output. That's great. Yes, indeed.
Yep. Well, and that also, once again, plays in the professional services and consulting services as well. These are people that you have on your team that you want to retain. They're there, and yes, you have to be careful about how you use them, but that's a resource that you have at your disposal to help a customer out, to help ensure that they're getting value. It's already a sunk cost. And, unless you're getting rid of those folks, you're already paying for them. There's a great way to provide value, additional value to your customers.
Cool. Moving to the next one. Similar, but in this case, if you have seats for something, and if you're basically selling by seat, then extending the seat count, or let's say offering additional 5, 10 seats, or either a hard number or a percentage of seats that, hey, we're going to give you 50% extra seats for the next 6 months because you're all likely in a remote working situation. What do you guys feel about that? I, of course, overview.
I caught myself there.
Such a rookie.
I am a rookie.
Zoom rookie. Zoom rookie.
Yeah, I think it's almost the same question as giving more transactions or upgrading to the next package for free, or it's just one of the different options that's valuable to your clients. Then yeah. And again, to Andrew's point, if you can afford to do it, and not put yourself out of business, then do it. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I personally think that adding seats. Given the infrastructure cost of running SaaS businesses is relatively low, so essentially it's the IP which you are serving as a service, and there's the infra that sort of maintains it. usually the cost of extending additional seats or opening up the limits. Sometimes limits can be expensive, especially if you've got another provider behind those limits, or if it really eats up your servers and compute powers or memory powers.
But is it more expensive than losing your customer? I mean, that's what you need to,
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And I like this one in particular because you're very likely adding new users and bringing them in your ecosystem, and likely when this is over, they may still want to use your platform, especially if it is relevant for them or getting access and things like those. So
it's the same outcome you get when you give your customer the access to additional products on your platform, right? For that renewal. Right. Because they if you get them to start using it, the end of that 1 year, they're like, hey, I really like this. Now in our next renewal, we're gonna have a nice upsell, right? Because they're using it. They've got data in it. It's become sticky because they've gotten it part of their process. Yeah, exactly. One thing I wanted to add to the kind of in the professional services, consulting services grouping is the some sort of a BPO type of offering where if you have the type of solution that your services team, who may not be as actively doing implementations, if they have free cycles, can be doing some BPO like support for your customers. Hey, do you need do you need help with actually doing the workflow that our product does for you, and offering that up as a value added service.
You mean running the service for your client?
Yeah. Well, maybe you can run the service for them.
Right,
yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, business process outsourcing, BPO.
Services.
Using your services folks to do, depending on what your solution is, using your own services folks who, if they have downtime, to be able to support your customers in that platform.
Yeah, but majority of the technology businesses, I hear where you're coming from, but I'm just thinking that's a very interesting option, because you can do that, although you usually end up limiting that to your key customers because of the limited bandwidth.
Of course.
Yeah, but that's
right. But we don't know. We don't know what you can't assume a limited bandwidth right now. You can't assume, just like we said, you can't assume engagement right now. So I'm just spitballing ideas, right? Instead of people sitting around or investing into the practice because I've talked to a lot of my customers. There's definitely there's a faction of our customers that are freaking busier than ever, and there's a faction of our customers where that business has dropped off. From a customer success perspective, they've definitely noticed a drop off, right? So have them doing other things that are adding value, not just investing back. I want to work on workflow. I want to build a playbook. And not that I'm trying, because as we're talking about, I get that you should be building playbooks, but you could also be spending some of your time providing a value-added service from your services or success team for your customers as well. That's all I'm suggesting.
Good one.
Or building community with your customers.
Yeah, it's great. Building community with your customers. Exactly. Yeah. Staying top of mind, creating content, all of these things to stay connected with your customers. And by the way, I harp on regularly, I've been doing this for years, on the checking in email that CSMs used to send out. Right now is the only time you can do the checking in, and it should be the checking in of, hey, I'm just checking in on you and how you and your family are doing during this time, and so that in itself is providing value, right? You're checking in on the customer, you're trying to strengthen that trusted advisor relationship, trying to strengthen that relationship with your customers. So that continuance of building community, even if it's one-on-one, is really important.
Awesome. Let's get to the next one, and I'm just flipping orders here. How can we utilize the other stakeholders, the execs, the CEOs, the CROs, the VP product, VP of sales, utilizing all those relationships, utilizing all those, I think skill set, power, all of that stuff. Have you seen them being used as part of the playbook? When do we bring them in? All of that stuff.
Yeah, I think now if you don't have an executive sponsor program, it may be a good time to go ahead and instantiate that. But again, use it sparingly as needed for your most at-risk customers and customers where you really need to drive a long-term relationship.
Yeah, if you want that to be taken seriously, don't bombard every single one of your customers with a letter from the CEO. It's a running joke now. I think I've gotten an email from the CEO of every company that I've ever done business with in the last 3 years in both my personal and business email address. Right? You want to use your CEOs, make it a really meaningful reach out. You want to use your C-suite, and so you're doing it for your largest, most strategic, or accounts that are at risk.
I'm guessing
and even the ones that aren't at risk.
Yeah, I'm guessing most of us are in B2B and like these B2C approaches where you're just like spraying emails out.
Yeah.
Sort of probably not gonna. They'll be appreciated to some degree, but they'll be noted for what they are, right? Which is high volume marketing. And
I've gotten more than a few of those on the B2B side as well. So.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but I think the execs can be really, really helpful, especially where we have a situation where you need to offer a lot of flexibility, or you want to keep get into an active or dynamic conversation. Where right now we are setting up a playbook, but you will always have those 5, 10, 20, 50 customers where there is no preset playbook, and you want to go and work with them. And I think those customers, while you are just enabling, collecting, doing all the homework, bringing in the concerns, and then making that conversation happen, and hopefully, arriving at a working decision, at a functional arrangement, which sort of enhances the relationships and keeps the partnership going.
I think CSMs have a unique opportunity right now too, because our executive teams are very busy trying to secure funding for the business, make sure we have updated forecasts for our boards, making sure that we have a plan for what we're going to do with our sales team, pivoting the product. Like, these are all conversations that are happening right now across the executive teams. They're not sitting on their thumbs. So I think CSMs have an opportunity to elevate themselves to an executive sponsor on the client side if they haven't had the opportunity to do that in the past. Maybe now is a good time for them to step into that a little bit more as well. Yes, bring in an executive when you can, but also leverage the moment to build relationships where you may not have had them before.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for CSMs to just think and make decisions with relevant data and leverage the tools that they have at their disposal. There is no, like I said before, there is no cookie cutter approach to any of this, right? We've thrown out a whole bunch of things today. We've spitballed a bunch of ideas. At the end of the day, you just need to think about how to approach this in the right way, and we'll all get through it.
Cool. Now, I know we are out of time, but the last one I'll quickly take is, if it comes down to this, that your customers are not utilizing the product, they're in a situation where they can't pay, they sort of have locked out of their business, and if such is the situation, then having this option of pausing billing, either 100% pause or maybe 50%, 75%, whatever makes sense in your case. What do you guys feel about that? I think this should be
I'd rather pause than lose them. I'd rather pause and retain them and retain their data and their users and everything and their configuration and their setup on my system, because it doesn't cost me anything, than to have them walk away.
Yeah. Yep.
100% agree.
Jack? Yep. Same here. Good. I think we covered a lot of ground today, and I'm glad I was able to get through all the topics. And Nilesh, I think we are ready to close, but I'll give it back to you if you have any questions from the audience that you want to bring in.
We have just one last question, which is, if you as a business are struggling and expansion MRR is essential for your business to survive, but your customers are having budget cuts and layoffs, what would be your strategy?
I didn't understand the first part of that, but it sounded like
if you as a business are struggling amid COVID-19 and as a company, an expansion MRR is essential for your business to survive, but your customers' companies are having budget cuts, layoff, they're looking for discounts and downgrades.
Yeah.
What would be your strategy?
It's an unrealistic target. I think the answer is sort of in the question there. It is an unrealistic target if that is indeed the situation. But the only good thing that I see is you definitely have the opportunity today by offering them those free upgrades, additional seats, where you can sow the seeds. And if delivered well, if onboarded well, and those pieces are relevant, then almost a certain explosion of expansions the moment your customers and the rest of the world sort of comes out of this COVID situation. So think of it that you'll not be able to sort of close those expansions today, but the work that you're going to do, the groundwork that you can potentially do today can and will, you will be able to reap them in the next 3 months, 6 months as we sort of come out, and hopefully sooner than that.
Agree with you.
Yeah. Cool. With that said, I think we're ready to close this lovely webinar and an amazing conversation. I think we touched a lot of topics. As you could see, it was a great conversation, and I think collectively we've figured out some direction and what will make a lot more sense, at least in my head. A lot of things are a lot more clearer. And thank you so much, Jay, for coming, and Andrew. It was amazing having both of you. And guys, we will make sure next time we will make it mandatory to wear full pants, and you will not be witnessing this. You will not have to hear this again.
Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Puneet. Hey, and one last thing for everybody before we cut off. Customer success is a very emotionally draining job. So as I tell my coaching students and all my customers, please make sure that you're taking care of yourself as well. Go for a walk, get some sun if you can, do some meditation, do some yoga, whatever it takes. Get yourself centered on a daily basis. And as Puneet let us off with, we'll all get through it.
We will. Stay safe, everyone. Stay safe, and enjoy. We are blessed to be still in business. We can work from home. Not true for a lot of us, but I'm glad. We are at least blessed. I always feel that. So stay safe, and I think we'll definitely not just survive but thrive. Cheers, guys. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a good rest of the days.